Hey, I'm Alena Turley. Today I'm truly honored and delighted to have the gorgeous Jimmy Doyle with me. Jimmy is one of the people who, when you Google the words top 5 healers Bali, Jimmy Doyle's name will come up. And he's my guest today because I was referred to him by a friend and did a little bit of work with him. And it was a really amazing experience. He is a body mind therapist. He has been for over 40 years. In his own words, he shows people their power, the power of words and the law of attraction. He is a very, really a unique person in the sense that when you speak to Jimmy, you get a sense of how simple things can be when it comes to finding your own power and coming home to yourself. And the way that he works is unusual. And even the way that he calls himself a body mind therapist, it's a refreshing take on something that can be sometimes quite confusing and kind of a little bit elusive, I guess, this kind of work. And so it really is such a delight to be able to present to you my conversation with Jimmy Doyle. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Thank you for having me, for the delightful chance to talk about what we do.
It's an absolute pleasure to sit here with you, Jimmy. I start every conversation with the same 3 questions. Who are you? Where are you? And what do you love to do?
Okay, so I'm a 67-year-old Australian male from the past times, which is not exactly what everyone lives into. I'm still quite old-fashioned in what I do. I'm a body mind therapist as part of my deal. I'm also a dad, a husband, a son, all the little things that come into being who we become. I love doing lots of things. I love surfing. That's part of I live in Bali. I've been in Bali for nearly 13 years. Um, I love my little family I've created here. I also have daughters from a previous marriage. I have grandchildren. I love what I do in my job because I love what it does. It helps people take their power back. And that's one of the lovely things that why I've done this job for over 40 years. It is a delightful thing to see people take their power back of where they're going physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's all a lovely little combination to do. That imparts a little bit about who I am and where I am.
Yeah, so many things I'd love to ask you from there. I guess the first question I have is how would you define the work that you do when you say body mind therapist? What does that mean for you? It helps people take their power back, but how does that work?
Okay, so what I do is whether people be present with me in the room here or I do it on FaceTime, but where there's blocks, pain, malfunctions, illness in people's bodies, I correlate it all to be subconscious. Everything, whether it's an ingrown toenail, cancer, infertility, back problems, sleep problems, period problems, they're all the same things. So what I do in my little presence here is teach people the power of words, their power, the power of words, the law of attraction. There's a lovely experiment that was done in 1994 by a Japanese scientist named Masura Emoto. And what he did was get water at each end of the bench. And what he got his students to come in and see the first lot of water, and they'd say incredibly negative stuff to it. I hate you, you're disgusting, I don't like to drink you. The other bottles of water, he got them to say how much they loved it, how much they looked forward to drinking, and how, they desired it all the time. And then he took samples from each of the bottles of water and froze them, put them under a microscope. The water with the negative words was a dense, ugly structure. The ones with the beautiful words had this beautiful crystallized structure. We're 85% fluid in our body, so our brain's 90%. So that means when we think negative things, we say negative things, we be in negative positions or with people or situations, then that's where we attract our blocks, our pain, our illnesses that we attract to ourselves. How I work with people is I either touch the point or get them to touch the point where it's either acupressure or trigger points. I get them to touch the point and they'll say how sore it is. They'll then look into their eyes, especially on FaceTime. In the room, it's a bit different. They got their head down a hole or got their eyes closed looking up. But I get them to say word patterns out, which makes them really uncomfortable, Lena. They're very positive statements, but it's always uncomfortable. It pulls emotions out of people, makes people anxious,
Yeah.
frustrated. They're saying
Yeah.
the things they know, but they've never been programmed to say out loud.
Yeah.
So what happens to them as they do that? There's always instant change to their physical discomfort or pain or problem that they have. And it's a process depending on, how long they've entrenched that pattern into their head,
Mm,
how many, how often they have to keep saying these things or protect themselves when the negative things come. So it's very simple, the process that I use, but quite powerful in what it does for people. And that's where I talk about them taking their power back, because they start
yeah,
learning to say positive things about themselves, such as, I love and approve of myself. I love and accept myself. I love and appreciate myself, which you'd be
yeah,
surprised how many people get incredibly uncomfortable with. One of the
yeah.
things I do with it, Alena, is always then teach them how to protect themselves against negative things. Now, I often ask people, how do you protect yourself when you're anxious, when you're frustrated, when you're pissed off? 99% of people respond by talking about reactions. They talk about putting walls up, withdrawing, screaming, yelling, going quiet. They're all reactions. They're not protection. So there's a lovely little method of protection that it's by putting the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth. Now, about 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch from the back of your teeth, where the ridge goes from behind your teeth, just rising up into that palate of your mouth. If people gently touch on that little point there, what they do is instantly connect their third eye. So there's a physical structure or physical bone going from where you're touching there straight to the bottom of your brain. And on top of that sits your pineal gland. And pineal gland is wisdom, insight, intuition, gut feeling. One of the things all women are gifted with, women don't choose to listen to it. Men are
Mm,
not gifted with it, and men's egos choose not to learn it.
mm,
Yeah, stuff for all the 41 years I've been doing this. I use my tongue for protection because obviously I've got to stay strong when I'm working with people and I hear dark stuff from people and difficult situations that they go through. And it's often not nice hearing. But the fact is, they need to talk about it, they need to release it. And I'm the facilitator for that. And so if I didn't use my tongue, then I'd end up sicker than all the people that I treat. So
yeah.
this is the little thing that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of commitment about learning to put your tongue to the roof of the mouth. It's used in sleep, stress, connection, protection, meditation. It's used for a lot of different things. But the difficult part is putting your tongue there when you've got emotional things going on, and because the
Mm,
emotion generally overrides it and we forget to do those things. So that's in a nutshell of what I do. So it helps all sorts of conditions. And, it's quite powerful, but quite simple. But it keeps going back to referring to which glass of water are you feeding? Are you feeding that negative
mm,
glass or the positive glass? Once we start to learn to, our subconscious as well, this is all subconscious, it's not conscious state.
yeah.
And most of us are not taught to address what's really in our head. One of the things I do, Lena, is always when left shoulder goes out on people, and I work on left side female, right side male.
Yeah.
One thing that's not gender specific, often with the shoulders, when it gets there, is left shoulder will be guilt about responsibility to know yourself, to be yourself. And we're all trying to please everyone else or get their approval, get their appreciation, get their acceptance. That's why I get people to say, I love and approve of myself. I love and accept myself.
Yeah.
So by saying those little things, you start to do those things for yourself and not wait for others to do it.
Yeah.
So in that point of doing that, then as I said, it's uncomfortable from saying it. And as I said, it generally brings emotions out with people and they often don't want to say it because they'll laugh and say, well, that's not true. And my deal is never to convince people to think a different way. It's just to say different patterns. As they say them, instantly that law of attraction starts to. So then we go back to the tongue is then you've got to be aware when this negative stuff comes, such as this knowing yourself to be yourself. The right shoulder is then often guilt about gaining for yourself in everything we do. And often,
Yeah.
again, we always want everyone else to gain rather than ourselves. But both of them are our responsibilities to know ourselves. And as I said, often people don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And you asked me who I was, and I straight away did what everyone else does and said, I'm a 67-year-old Australian male.
Yeah.
That's actually not who I am. I'm a compassionate, empathetic uh, person who gets frustrated and pissed off with idiots. And I don't deal with a lot of nonsense there. So once you start little things like receiving pleasure, I'm a giver, not a receiver. Once you start to understand these little things about yourself, then you start to understand when you need to protect yourself.
Yes.
Ankles are quite an interesting little situation. Often people get problems with their ankles. And it's through guilt or inflexibility about receiving pleasure, not giving pleasure, receiving pleasure. So that can be a gift, it can be compliments, it can be having a sleep in, having a day off. Often, again, we'll feel guilty about these little things, and then often ankle problems comes. Once you understand those little things about yourself, when you're being given a gift and you don't want the gift, or you're given a compliment and you don't want the compliment, that's when you learn to put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. The beauty of it, Alena, nobody knows you're doing it. Your mouth's closed.
Yes.
You're still standing, you're still here. They don't know you're doing it. but you're connected and protected. So it's a simple little technique, but it takes a lot of discipline and practice
And
about
they're
doing it.
talking about where it goes. I know you get asked this all the time. There's like the space between the teeth, then there's a kind of a ramp, and then there's another bump. How far between the start of the ramp and the other bump are you talking?
So, so what I say is 2.5 centimeters from the back of the teeth, or 1 inch from the back of the teeth.
Mhm.
If people Google up the 10th connection, that's what it's called, is the 10th
Mhm.
connection. By Googling up the 10th connection, it teaches you what it
Okay,
gives a
that's
diagram,
interesting.
it gives the distance from it. But what people will find when they touch it, Alina, is that when it's active, it's quite sensitive.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of it. Once you start learning to touch it, then it gets
Yes.
sensitive. And then the sensitivity means you're starting to pay attention to your subconscious or your sensitive self, which we start realizing, oh, that's what pisses me off, or that's what frustrates me. Then
Yeah.
you start learning to connect and protect it. But it
Yes.
takes it's not easy to put there, especially when you're emotional. But
Bit of practice.
one of
I
the
learned it
keys.
actually in martial arts. When I learned to meditate in the martial arts, I study Hapkido, which is a Korean martial art, and I've done it for about, I don't know, 10, 11 years, and I'm a black belt instructor. And still a lot of people don't know about this, but when you're meditating, it's something we learn to do as a way of connecting meridians, in the sort of Eastern way of thinking. Yeah. So
But it
same thing
connects
as what you're
sharply.
saying.
So that's
Yeah.
what you're saying there. So Kundalini raising or heart building, that's one of the
Yes.
techniques that's used in meditation. It's
Yes.
interesting. Most meditations don't teach it. Society doesn't teach it because they
I don't
actually don't
remember
want
where
you
I
to do it.
learnt it, but I did learn it in definitely
Um,
at some point.
like a lot of Asian cultures, they're delightful in what they do.
I want to take a pause to share with you the incredible work that the women in the Soul Mama community are doing at the moment to step into big change, into their version of success, healing the obstacles that stop us, helping silence the negative self talk, the self doubt that gets in the way of us, bringing into the world our biggest visions for ourselves, our families, and our communities. It's a supportive space. You can join a free community and gain a host of resources. It's a really exciting place to be, and you will feel the gentle accountability of the community. At www.alenaturley.com, that is Alenaturley. I can't wait to see you in there, people.
I also
Yeah,
use the Chinese body clock, which is a 3,000-year-old method. They're not new things.
it's cool.
But that gets you back to isolating. Instead of having to know the whole meridian line, you isolate back to a power point of meridian lines, which then helps the function of sleep, helps the function of pain in your body, but making your bowel work
Interesting.
properly. But that's the thing. But the little thing that's interesting, you said there about often people come and they'll meditate and they're very good at meditation, but then they
Mm,
realize by using their tongue, the meditation climbs 10 times more powerful because they stop
very
the voice
different.
in their head.
Yeah,
That's what it's doing, stopping those other negative influences that we get in our head, which cause problems to us. But if we don't
yeah,
know ourselves and we don't know our vulnerable qualities, then we
yeah.
just let these things manifest.
I
And
really
that's
think that connection is so much a founding kind of concept and a founding experience for so much of our healing, like connection within and also connection between. But I want to return to that. But I also want to ask you, how did you come to do this work? How did you learn to do this work?
so 43 or 44 years ago, I had a car accident and I injured my back and shoulder quite badly. And it already had pain in them anyway, which I realized it just accentuated the pain. Through the process of going through the medical world, the options were quite disastrous. It was putting a rod down my back and screwing the vertebrae together and doing a lateral release on my shoulder. Well, that was, as a young man in his early 20s, was quite confronting. And that's what made me go and say, there's got to be other ways of doing this.
Yeah,
And of course, I'm not anti-medical. The medical world does great things to help interfere. Generally, it doesn't fix things, but it interferes and it helps us master things and helps us manage things. So the deal was not to go and, as a young man, to have that stuck down my back was not going to be
mm,
a great outcome. So I initially learned deep tissue massage by a very powerful man named John Goodenbiel in the Cross in Sydney. Spent a couple of years with him learning. It was learning about deep tissue treatments. And so that was the first part of it. And it was interesting. It was the first person of treatments that I had through chiropractic, physio, all the cortisone injections, all the little things there were actually made an impact in the treatment. But it hurt. And he was,
yeah. It does hurt,
that's
doesn't it?
right. Yeah, it hurt. But
Oh man,
the
it
interesting
hurts.
part,
Not for the
I
faint-hearted.
realized, well, it not, but the fact was it started the deal where I realized, wow, that actually helped.
Yeah.
So through the process of doing that, I've then come across a lot of different modalities of kinesiology, theta healing,
Yes.
body, mind, soul, the physical treatment I did with Swedish remedial massage. So all those little things, that's how I then put together all these little different things. There's also two other very influential women in my treatments of what I do, of Louise Hay, who does books like You Can Heal Your Body, also Ennett Noontil, an Australian author who does The Body is the Barometer of the Soul. They're very helpful books about
Did
getting
you
to
meet
understand
those
what
women,
you're living
Jimmy?
with. No, I've never met either of them. As you know, Louise Hay is dead now. She died about 4 years ago, but no, I've never come across them. And, but two incredibly powerful women who still have a great influence. Even though Louise Hay is dead, she still has a massive influence and will have in
She's
time for the rest
amazing.
of her
Can
life.
I tell you my Louise Hay story? I did actually,
Please.
I was in the same room as her once. So I grew up in a household where my mother, when something was wrong, she would pull out the book with the rainbow on the front and the list of ailments. We barely went to the doctor. That was our doctor. And at the time it seemed very strange, but it was quite effective and sometimes it'd be frustrating. I just want to go to the doctor. Well, have you looked in the Louise Hay book yet? And then one day, probably, I want to say 18, 15 years ago, maybe, she came to Australia when she was in her 80s. And she was up on stage with one of the women that she gave a lot of her kind of, she was seeding a lot of her wisdom to and kind of mentoring. She had a few of those, but I can't remember her name. She was fantastic as well. But what I remember is Louise Hay getting up on stage, telling me how to make broth and how to put all your veggie scraps in a drawer in the freezer so that you always could make broth. And and talking, funnily enough, with a total potty mouth. She swore like a trooper, which I loved because you don't see that side of her in the videos. But when she was on stage, she dropped the F-bomb multiple times. And she talked about how she would carry her keys in her bra. She was just a very down to earth person. And she was quite, elderly and I wouldn't say frail, but she was diminutive, a small frame. And it was sort of surprising, but she had this lightness and this humor to her. And I think that really speaks to what you're talking about, that if you're going to do work in this space and you're going to do work where people tell you really heavy stories, you do have to protect yourself. You do have to bring that lightness, that you mentioned to the
Mm.
work. Otherwise, you can't keep doing it, I guess.
And that's why I've done it for 40 years, 41
Yeah.
years. Because I've had that little protection. I love, that's the first time I've ever heard a real story about Louise Hay. So
Really?
often people come, they'll Google my name up and I get listed in the top 5 healers in Bali. And
Yeah.
so I'm the only non-Indonesian that's on there. And when people open my door, Alena, they all of a sudden go, oh, and I said, there's a problem. They said, oh, you're not what we expected. What do you expect? So I'm a bald headed, just what you described there, potty mouth
Oh, me
Australian.
too.
And the point is, but you're real about this. We're not standing here pretending we're not. But what they
Mm.
expected is someone who had dreadlocks, a beard, in the
Yeah.
Kaftan, burning incense, saying far out men. And that's not what I'm going to do. And
Yeah.
that can become quite confronting to people where you actually be
Yes.
real about those
What do you
situations. And
think
you
that is? What do you think the confronting part of this is? You said that people feel really uncomfortable when they start to say these words or, when they start to change the phrases in their own mind and body in response to a particular sensation or problem. Why do you think that's so confronting?
programs, darling, because how we're programmed.
Yeah.
And that's what I work is rewiring the hip. So you put in the program of positivity into you rather than the one that was put you. And we were all told we were not good enough, we were inadequate, we we're unworthy, all those little things as a kid growing up, whether that be at school, by parents, by history, by society, by
Yeah.
DNA. So once we start saying these positive things, especially, it's one of the things I do with especially women with their thyroid. And one of the
Mm.
reasons the thyroid goes out is because of humiliation about when do I get to do what I want to do? When's it my turn?
Yeah.
And I'll often say to them, so when is it your turn? And then they can't answer. They just cry
Mm.
because
Yeah.
they don't feel it ever their turn. So this is our humble, non-programmed self to actually be in love with self because we're told that's selfish and egotistical. So we don't do those things because we're not made to be comfortable with them.
Yeah.
And I've said this stuff so much times, because of Louise Hay's thought patterns and it tells a different direction about where you're going. But I've said it so much time, it's just my pattern now.
Mhm.
That's the thing. I'm comfortable with saying it. Like all things. So we liken it to what we, all want to drive a car. So we get in there and we're incredibly nervous and we stall the car and you hit the wrong button or don't, change lanes as we should. But after you've been doing it for years, you just get in, turn the keys on and just drive it. So
Sure.
this is no different because it's once the
Yeah.
program's changed, you become changed as well. But we're often uncomfortable saying anything about ourselves because, especially in Australian society, where oh,
Yeah.
you get all you're selfish, you're full of yourself,
Mm.
which is none of the above because it's that thing I talked about shoulders. Our
Yeah.
responsibility is not to feel guilt about knowing ourselves to be ourselves or to gain for ourselves. Now, you say
Mm.
that to most people, and that's exactly what they'll tell you. You're selfish. So it's
There's a difference
not
though, isn't
right.
and I'm really interested in this because I work with women mainly, and
Mm.
I'm just at the start of well, I say I'm at the start of calling myself a somatic therapist. I think I've actually been doing it for a bloody long time.
Of course,
But
you have. Good
yeah,
point.
and I remember about 10 years ago going, "Why are all my friends healers and therapists?" Like, "This is so weird." And then now I kinda get why. But I just think it's really interesting that this thing about receiving is huge for women. I'd love to hear your take on that. I know what I think, but I would love to hear what you think about it.
Well, they give us, and they give of life. That the first job they do is they give life. So they're already taught to be givers. As I said,
Mm,
often women have ankle problems, their ankles are swollen, and because they don't receive pleasure, they're givers. And once they start to understand themselves, they don't need to change themselves. They just, when those compliments or gifts and nice things come in, you learn to put your tongue up there. But I
yeah,
also believe in, depending on where you are in the world and society, and obviously
yeah,
you're in Bali, that's a delightful thing. I get to treat people from all over the world, but
yeah.
that's what women are programmed to be, is to almost to serve. And women humbly do that very, very well.
Mhm.
And that doesn't make them better or less. It just says that's what women are good at doing. That's
And
what
we
they're
have
called.
hormones to back that up. I mean, estrogen is a very, very powerful hormone of,
Unbelievable. And that's
backing
what
that
breasts
up.
do. Breasts mother and nurture.
Yeah,
That's often
sure.
why women have
We
problems with
are.
their breast, is
Mm,
because they'll over mother, over nurture, put
yeah,
everyone else first. That's called why they have that title mothers.
yeah,
And that part of that little deal, I believe, is why they get these little afflictions come to them. And unfortunately, we all complicate everything, Alena, and that's
yeah.
a big problem. We had a young gentleman who has had many issues, but he'd done lots of work and he was teaching to meditate and is saying, follow the breath in the end of your nose, rise and fall of your chest. When a thought comes, acknowledge the thought and dismiss the thought. All he wanted to focus is, so he said, Jim, so what? Do I take the breath in my left nostril, bring it down my right nostril, up my right nostril, down my left nostril? I said, mate, stop. I said, you just breathe. I said, when you're a master, you will do that. But the fact is, you're just learning this. Just breathe. But that's the point. We make it complicated because we've heard the stories of what the guru on the mountain did. So we all
Yeah,
think we got to do the same thing. It's
yeah,
just being ourselves and not complicating things. Once we
yeah,
simplify it, and that's what I do in here is incredibly simple, but
yes.
incredibly powerful.
And what
And
do you
it's not
think comes up again and again, like with your clients?
no,
What's the most
because
common reason, like, people
we
come to you for help?
a multitude of things, whether it's a sore back, whether it's a period problem, whatever. Just with women, a really common thing that they get will be period pain.
Yeah,
And most, again, you go back to programs again. And I ask most women, what was your first experience like with your mother when you first got introduced to your periods? And of course, they go, it was disastrous, it was embarrassing, it was uncomfortable. When it should have been, here's your power, darling. And there's a little point on your pubic bone, by points on your pubic bone, if you touch either outside edge of it and hold it every night for 30 seconds and say the statement, I embrace my feminine principles, I love being a woman, then that's exactly what your feminine principles start doing. You menstruate well, you ovulate well, you're regular on the deal, you don't get crazy girl coming out, you don't get PMS, you don't get PMT, you don't get the cramps, you don't get the heavy flow, light flow. This is changing programs of every night, pressing that little point for 30 seconds and saying that statement out loud. And that's the key of all this, saying it out loud, because we talked about the
yes,
glass of water before. Once you say it out loud, the universe will respond to it. And it really is, again, that simple. But once they start to learn to embrace their principles, all of a sudden their periods regulate. They don't get cramps. They don't get the heavy flow, the light flow. The little miss emotional doesn't come out 3 days before. They start to manage it. So that's a common thing that all females that I point to do that with them.
that's amazing,
Thyroid
isn't it?
issue, little things, breast problems that are a big problem. We just talked about that before, about over mothering, over protecting, overbearing attitudes, because they're mothers. So they do
Mm.
those things. They put everyone else first. But in doing so, they cause great grief to their breast. and paying attention again, whether it's left or right side, you start to influence whether
Yes.
it's the men you're mothering or the women you're mothering, whether it be children, husband, father, mother.
Yes.
Uh, it's a very common thing that happens. The other really common thing that goes is two things that I say. If you're not sleeping properly or not shitting properly, then you're not going good. And they're really important things to do. And sleep means when you go to bed, putting your head on the pillow, do not move until the alarm goes off in the morning. Wake up, be refreshed. That's sleeping properly. And most
Yeah.
people, going back to the Chinese body clock, there's 2 hours, every 2 hours, one of the organs peaks. So on the night clock, for example, 9 till 11 is the triple warmer, 11 to 1 is gallbladder, 1 to 3 is liver, 3 to 5 is lungs, 5 to
That's
7 is
interesting.
colon or bowel. So there's a constant time you're waking. There often will be issues with those functions of those organs, but it's always about what emotions go with them. So example,
Yeah.
3 to 5, lungs. Lungs are about sadness, grief, anguish,
Mm.
abandonment, guilt, anxiety. So when we wake at that time, we think our partner's snoring or the dog barked or I need to go to the toilet. It's not, it's those emotions being pulled at that time.
Grief. Yeah.
So this is where we start to understand and know who we are and
Mm.
then learn to protect. So there's little points on your body. If you press and say little statements with them, then it helps
Mm.
you sleep. The other one,
Mm.
bowel. Bowel's a really interesting one. So living in Bali, Bali has its own little title here called Bali Belly. And
Yes.
I think it's quite hilarious. And Delhi gets another one, Delhi Belly.
Yeah.
So when two things that go with it is vomiting and diarrhea. So vomiting is when we have violent rejection of new ideas or violent rejection of the new. We vomit.
Yeah.
So people come here, they've got to change money. They're told not to drink the water. If they brush their teeth with the water, they're going to die. So they come with great fear inside of them. And this is new. So they'll get uncomfortable with it and their subconscious rejects it. Diarrhea
Mm.
is when there's fear, rejection, running away. So there's the word fear again. Once we fear these little things we're going to do, and this is not
But not
consciously
of
what
the
we
new. So diarrhea is not fear of the new. It's just fear.
it's just fear, yeah.
Mm.
Fear, rejection, running away. That when we have chronic diarrhea, it's
Mm.
when we have a goal and we realize we can't attain that goal, so we just give up. So therefore, chronic diarrhea will come.
Yeah.
On the reverse hand, constipation is when we're stuck in the past or we're stuck in old patterns, refuse to change, and that might be I need to drink water every day and I don't do it. I need to
Yes.
not go to the job that I hate, but I go there every day. I need to
Resistance
not
to
be
change.
okay. So we get stuck in the pattern.
Yeah.
Also, when we're stingy, and as you know, us lovely Australians, we use the lovely term tight asses. So
Yeah.
if you're a tight ass, you're not going to shit properly. That's a reality.
So right.
Then the other one that goes with it about words, when we've got all these words we want to say and we hold the words and we get stuck on the words, that also
Yeah.
causes constipation as well.
Yeah.
So these little things, when we start to understand this is getting to know ourselves,
Yeah.
then we actually can
Yeah.
be us. Then the functions work properly.
Yes.
And we're all going to die at some point. That's a reality of our body. Our body has
Yeah.
a set time where it's gonna not be used by it anymore.
Yeah.
But if what our aim is to the time we are awake, alive, that we do it in our most pain-free state, our most positive state, our most energetic state. And that's where these little simple things about getting to know yourself, you start to be yourself, but you also don't go with all the pains that everyone else carries.
Yeah.
And
That's
it
beautiful. I want to ask you about multi-system things. So like things like mental health anxiety or, hormonal imbalances and autoimmunes. Is that when they involve multi-system? Because this is a really big thing in our society at the moment,
totally,
isn't it?
totally.
What's your take on that? Like, does the root cause matter? It sounds like for the work that you do, the root cause is not really the most important thing. It's more about how you respond to it once you know it's happening.
Once you know it's happening, and that's where you
Yeah.
protect, say these positive statements. Just an example of what we've all been through in the world for COVID. So, Melbourne was the most locked down city of the world.
Yeah.
And in that time, they were not to mix with each other. They were not to go to work, not to go and visit their families when they were dying, go to weddings. I mean, they were restricted movement unbelievably. Go check the numbers at that time. That's when the numbers skyrocketed in Melbourne of that virus. If we
Yeah.
look at the origin of the viruses come when where there's bitterness or there's no joy flowing through life. So do you think those people who all were locked down were not bitter? Of course they were. Do you think the joy had been taken away from them? Of course it was. So therefore,
Yeah.
that leaves them vulnerable to the virus.
Yeah.
And
So
again,
immunity and joy, that's interesting. Yeah.
joy and bitterness, they're a lot about viral things. Everything has your word anxiety used. And anxiety is a really common thing that goes with
It
people, and
really
that's
is.
also important to wake between that 3 and 5 because it's
Yeah.
related to the lungs. But anxiety is as soon as we don't trust the flow and the process. Now, whether that's
Yeah.
getting the job done, being in a relationship, um, getting up and, doing the things that you desire to do, that causes anxiety.
Yeah.
So, but we got to know ourselves when those things come. So when we do know them, up goes the tongue. You stop that
Yes.
pattern manifesting in subconscious, which means that it doesn't keep then addressing the body. But we got to know
Yes.
ourselves, whatever. And I always say to people, you're not here when I work with them, they're not to change. They're already perfect as they are. What their
Yeah.
job is to get to know themselves so they can be themselves. Once they be
Yeah.
that, then they're trying to please everyone else. A lot of people's health just changes on that when they start to know who they are.
Yeah. That's
Right.
so
So
powerful.
it's simplifying it is how I keep saying to them. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it complicated because
Yes.
that's what. And I'm a rather simple man. You know, sometimes that bothers people because I put it in such a simplistic version, but it
I
doesn't
think
need
it's
to be
great. It's
completely
great. I mean, I just say
simplistic.
thoughts are there for thinking, like thoughts are there to be thought and feelings are there to be felt. It
Yep.
doesn't mean you believe every single one, you know?
The lovely Bruce Lee, he made a little statement: "Be careful what you say or think." And especially as Australians, we're facetious. We take the piss a lot, especially about
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
His statement was, "The universe doesn't know whether you're joking or not. It just hears the statement, so it'll react to that statement." Such as
Yes.
every June I get a cold. Get ready for the 1st of June coming. You're getting a cold.
Yeah.
Something difficult's in front of you and you go, "Well, that'll never work." Then don't do it. You just told the universe it won't work.
Oh,
And this is the
no.
power of the
I
water
have
again.
so true. I have a member of my family who often says, "I've got a bad back," or "I've got a bad elbow," or "I've got a bad leg," or something like that, you know?
Mm.
And I said, "No, no, no. You can say I've got a sore back. You can say I'm feeling some pain in my back. But if you say I've got a bad back, well, you've got it.
Exactly what it's gonna be
You
to you.
get what you say. That's right." And
And
it
there's the
really annoys
program.
them. It really annoys them.
Or,
Um,
I laugh when you say that about the book because that's what I've always done with, especially my wife now, and she's
mm,
Indonesian. And Indonesians, their culture is quite different to Australian culture, so they really do connect with their elders beautifully. And
oh, I love that about
they,
Indonesian
oh,
culture.
so well, the
Yeah.
elders they all still live in the same house, the same kampung,
Yeah,
because they don't have
beautiful.
anything home here. So there's always the kids connected with grandmum or great grandmum, and what they'll always say, the term in Indonesia, orang bilang, people say. So she would always say when we're talking about things and talking about relationships that people say, and I always go, "Buku bilang," the book says, and we take the piss out of each other saying, because I'll always say the book says, and she says people say.
Yeah.
And also people say some dumb things to us as well, such as,
Yeah.
you know, one of their little, what would you call it, idiosyncrasies is don't whistle at night time because it attracts ghosts or attracts the hunt, the evil person. My
Yeah.
little boy loves to whistle. And of course, he whistles anytime. But they all get nervous and whistles after dark. Don't go
Yeah.
out without your shirt on because you get muscle and your wind will enter your body. Now,
Right.
again, that's the program.
Yeah.
So they all then react and respond to that. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting, and it's what society does. And
Mm.
the conspiracist in my head puts that little thing is the power to be don't really want you to know these simple techniques because they don't manage to control you then. We learn to
Yeah.
control ourselves, and that's what I'm very much about, what we talked about right at the start. People taking their
Power.
power.
Yeah. That's a
And that's
big
so
thing.
important that we do it. Oh, it's so important.
It's a big thing. I got my black belt when I was 50. And it's really interesting
Wow.
when you and I say that not it's a humble brag, right? I'm really proud of it.
You should be.
But it's been there was a huge challenge there around stepping into my power. And the funniest thing was I had all these blocks. I had all these things about not being good enough at this and not being good enough at that. And the not good, not enoughness. I call it not enoughness. And I
Mm.
had a lot of not enoughness based on my life experience. And I was slowly, eliminating what actually I was not good enough at to do the grading and had to train and what I actually was, and it was a confidence issue. And it was also a spiritual process of really stepping into how much power I have. And then it was funny on the day, it was by no means a perfect grading. It never is, but it was good. And I realized that actually the test on the day wasn't about how well you knew techniques or how brave you were or how powerful you were or any of those things. It was literally, can you be present? Can you be present and focused for 5 hours? It's a 5 hour long test, 4.5. And it was like, can you trust your body and trust your instinct and trust what you know long enough to get through this thing and like not get in your own way? And that was a really interesting experience because I realized that the power that we always have is to recognize where we are right now, like accept the simple truth of your reality.
Isn't this like a lot of things that have hidden agendas? I mean, that's what it was showing you. Be present, be in your space, be comfortable in your
Mm,
space.
mm.
But they didn't tell you that's what they're going to do. They'll tell you, going to give you a black belt. So
Yeah, I
you focus on
suppose.
that little deal instead
Yeah.
of looking at all the other qualities that comes. Martial arts is an amazing thing about discipline.
Yeah, it
And that's
is.
mostly about is about discipline. And it's,
Yeah.
you also got great little weaponry in your body once you learn it.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
strength
that's
and
not
power
what
for
people
sure.
learn it for. That's not
No,
what they learn.
no.
They learn
I
it
don't learn
defense.
it to be
That's not
able to
what
win a
you do.
fight.
No, no, no. In fact, what it does is stops you from fighting.
No, you never have to fight. That's
No,
absolutely
that's
right.
not.
And in fact,
Yeah.
it also allows you to protect others. I've had experiences. Do you remember at the beginning of COVID when there was a fair bit of racism flying around, particularly around like Asian cultures? And there was this crazy going on. I remember seeing a woman getting harassed in a car park locally, when you're allowed to go to the shops once a week. And I went to the shops and it was kind of empty. And there was this woman being completely abused by a man. And I just walked over there and it was fascinating. The moment I even turned towards it, and one of the reasons I could walk over there as a not very large woman is because I have martial arts training. I'm not scared in that
Yep.
situation. So I'm
Yep.
able to advocate for someone who is scared and being unfairly treated. And I love that about it. And so I just started to walk there. The moment I started to walk in that direction, the man turned and walked away. And I was like, that is so cool. Like just witness, ethical bystanding. And then the other part of it that was fascinating was that when I then checked in with her and said, are you okay? And I started to walk away, he began to return. And it was fascinating. And I noticed,
To be really proud of your energy, Dom. That shows your presence and what your
I was
energy is.
really proud of my energy. I
Yeah.
looked at him, I gave him the martial art eyes, which is like,
Yeah.
don't fuck with me, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not scared of you. And he turned and walked away. And I was like, look at that. Like sometimes the power of presence and simple, like it was intention, really. Like I didn't
Mm.
say a word to the man, literally just looked at him and said, you can get fucked and I'm looking after this lady. And it was like, awesome. I said all of that with just being there. And I think that is something we don't kind of cultivate or talk about enough is like our ability to use our presence, our energy, our power in ourselves, as you say. Knowing that power is a really cool thing. Like I can't do it all the time, but it's there.
No. But at least also this is another thing where you have empathy and compassion, which unfortunately our society is lost.
Yeah.
And we don't want to say that we'll see that and we might get the camera going and film it, but we're certainly not
Yeah.
going to go and get involved in it. So I'm going
Yeah.
to really go, everyone will
Well, I
look at it.
will.
It's,
I'm the
yeah,
idiot
well,
that will. But
I'm
like,
like you, I will as well. But the fact
yeah,
is, most people won't because they're frightened that they'll get
right.
involved and they'll have to
Right.
actually go and step up and actually be counted here. And
Right.
here's this stuff again, we're all human beings. And this is one of the lovely things I like about Bali is because I treat people from all over the world. And one of the things
Yeah.
I've worked in, it's Alena, is that it doesn't matter who we are. We're all of the human race. What color, creed,
Yes.
whatever. We're all human beings. And that's the part of where I work with. It doesn't matter where they're from. Everyone's got the same emotions. We're all humans. We might have a
Yes, there's an
slightly different
essential truth.
edit or
Yes.
application to them, but we're all humans. We all get sad. We all get happy. We all get pissed off. We all get
Yeah.
frustrated. And that's one common thing that every human being does. And when we start understanding this, we come from a culture that's taught to be racist. And
Yes, we are. I know.
it's
I really,
not a wonderful thing, but
yeah.
I think the white Australian policy was still in presence till the 60s in Australia. It's still
Yes,
entrenched. That
terrifying.
generation of those people, which I'm part of that generation, still
Yeah.
exists. And
Yeah.
as you know, we're incredibly multicultural Australia. And it has the facade that it really is wonderful and melts beautifully together. Well, the reality
Mm.
is it does. It should, but it doesn't because this whole
Sometimes
people,
it does not.
you've got
Yeah.
a different creed, you've got different skin color, you eat different food, you wear different clothes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Difference. It's that fear of difference. And I think it's a little bit about that uncomfortability that you were talking about before. And to me, the antidote is connection. To me, the antidote is, like you say, connecting with the things we have in common more than the
really,
things we don't, and understanding that when we have resistance to something we don't understand, that's a natural process. And it just speaks to something in us that needs some attention. It has nothing to do with that person, really.
Not really. Well, unfortunately, when most people get to know him, or not unfortunately, but fortunately, when they get to know him, they realize, well, he's just a really good guy. Of course he was. He's just the
Yeah, it's
same
a
as you.
lot about that, isn't it?
He's a good
Connecting,
kid.
connecting, connecting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. So tell me,
I
what
have,
is I'm gonna you go.
no, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you for 2 things before we wrap up. I'm aware we could talk for ages, and I love talking to you, Jimmy. I'm so
You
grateful
know,
for you
like,
coming on. And I wanted to know, is there one particular affirmation that you would like to really leave listeners with that you feel is kind of a foundational one that could benefit them?
um, I think the one I do to every single person that comes in, be it on FaceTime or in the room here, the most important one is I love and approve of myself. I love and accept myself. I love and appreciate myself. Those three, looking in the mirror, I encourage your listeners to go and try it. See how hard it is.
Yes.
But the deal is to smile as you do it, then you realize how really difficult it is. People find reasons not to get in front of the mirror. They'll close their eyes when they're doing it. This is the challenge. Once also you know how to love yourself, then you'll attract the love you deserve. But we're
Yes.
not programmed into loving ourselves because as I said before, we're taught you're selfish, you're conceited, you're full of yourself. It's not at
Yes.
all. Once we know how to love ourselves, we'll actually let the love come in that we deserve. And the more we work at it. So I've got to say that every single person, doesn't matter, man,
Mhm.
woman, boy, girl, old, young, they're all the same. That everyone gets that download to go and work on that.
Yeah.
And often you'll then ask people to do it. Oh, I did it for 3 days. Well, this is the point. Becomes a journey of life. And the more you say it, the truth
Mm.
is that's what you'll attract. So I'm glad you asked that because it really is important to learn self-love.
Yeah,
Once we
that's the one I'm
understand
gonna go
ourselves,
right on the
we'll attract
mirror.
more. Yeah,
Right on the mirror.
and that's the point. I get them to put the card on the mirror so that every time they see their eyes, at least once a day, they
Yeah.
start saying it. And it's
Yeah.
as I said, when you start saying it, you realize it's really, really difficult. So the two
Yeah.
things that I stress to people is about that I love and approve, but also then learning to use your tongue.
Yeah.
But it's getting to know those situations and when to use it, which is generally most of the time.
Yes.
Use your
Yes. And
tongue.
remembering, like conditioning
Well,
the body to do it
uh, it-
subconsciously.
you meditate, I meditate. So this little thing where we learn to do it when we meditate, that's how you learn to use it
Mm.
for longer periods of time.
Yes.
And you're also learning to use it to get in a relaxed state to manage your head. So I
Yes.
encourage you people meditate, that they learn to meditate with their tongue. But Google up the 10th connection.
I
That'll
will.
give you all
Thank
the
you.
information
Awesome.
about it. And it'll show you the diagram of what it does at connecting the chakras. It talks about the distance that it's put bit from the back of your teeth. But it
Yeah.
also then says it's used in sleep, stress, connection, protection, meditation. It's used for a lot of different things.
Amazing.
And if people did it, they'll be amazed that one simple little technique in loving themselves, how much their energy will grow anyway. And
Yes.
also to simplify things, don't make things so complicated.
Yeah, keep it simple. And then the last question I'm going to ask you is there one unique story or insight or just something that's floating around in you at the moment that you've not really shared before, but maybe that you'd like to share now? Something very present.
But just people's power, darling. I got to say, this is why I've done this for so long. And people say, doesn't it bore you? I mean, it doesn't bore me. I mean, because I'm in the room, client after client of what you're doing. It certainly doesn't do that. It doesn't tax me because, as I said, I like seeing people take their power back. An example was a woman who I'd treated here and she'd gone back. She was a Romanian and gone back to her where she was living, which is in one of the African states. And she was in a beautiful, loving relationship with a guy she's been in love with for a long time, married to for a long time. And she couldn't have children. And she was told by the medical world, she was 47, I think 46, 47, that she was too old and she should forget about it and,
Yeah.
get on with her life. And she was incredibly devastated because they really loved each other. They, had comfortable money, comfortable life, all the rest. They just wanted to create a family. And so they had all the tests done by, the Beyond IVF programs, all that little different stuff. Anyway, long and the short of it is this woman contacted me and we did a couple of sessions with her. And one of the things she did as a young girl, she had an abortion as a 16-year-old and she'd
Mhm.
never ever told anyone about it. And this is again relating to lots of stuff you'll work with females, but these little secrets we keep from people, they're not
Yes.
secrets, they're just normal facts of life. And when she worked out that the guy, was her first occasion of sex, it was all from a very strict Romanian Catholic background, that you don't talk about any of that stuff. But also, she went and got termination done without anyone knowing, just by herself. And it was an incredibly courageous thing.
Yeah.
And must have been punishing for her head. Anyway, she had it done, and interesting enough, that's actually why she couldn't have a baby because, she never used contraception, never used anything, but never got pregnant. And funny enough, she went back and forgave herself. And this is another little tool where you talk about these little wonderful things is learning to forgive. And forgive
Mm.
doesn't let anyone off the hook for saying someone's right or wrong. It says, I didn't like it. I don't agree with it. I don't want it to happen again. I'm done. I'll leave it back in the energy world. There's your end. Do what you want with it. I forgive you. But it's also learning to forgive herself. So that young lady went back and forgave herself as that 16-year-old, realizing that that definitely was not the time to have the baby. That guy was definitely not the guy to be a father of her
Yeah.
child. Funny enough, once she forgave herself, she now has a bouncing little boy who's a couple of years old now. And the funny part about Alena, when we were doing the little work with her, she said, I just want a baby. And of course, here's our universe testing us. It gave her the baby. She was asking for a beautiful, healthy little boy. But she was so depressed afterwards. She wanted a little girl. She
Oh,
forgot to tell the universe what she wanted. And
so be
here's where we
specific.
are. Well, exactly when we ask for things. So this gets to a lot of little things about little stories that we put there that open a lot of stuff to her head. But you ask for something, by all means, you ask for it. And command is the word you use. And command is, in Latin, it's cooperating with man and woman. It's quite a delightful word. Demand is quite opposite. It's demanding. It's defeatism. It's not a good word to use, but command
Yeah.
is. When we can do the command, be comfortable with what you command, but know what you're going to command. Be specific with what you command, because then you'll attract it. So,
Beautiful. And it speaks to the power we have.
oh, don't we have it all? I encourage people to look up that Dr. Misaru Emoto, so that they can actually see stuff. It's a real, and we love the sciences of things, Alina.
Oh,
So
yeah, me
this
too. I'll
this is
link it in the show notes. I'll link to it. I've
okay.
heard
So
about that before. It's a
it's
fantastic experiment.
it's a great one, and so it's done in 1994. And this is the point: is our world's starting to open up to different things there, and that's why you and I get to talk to people, and people want to hear because they want to hear a different angle of how to do this.
Yeah.
Because, and again, we're not anti-medical, but this point is it's saying this fixes, we're opposed to masking it. And you're
Yeah.
not looking at the term. Once you fix it, you then get to know you. When that vulnerable quality comes, you learn to connect and protect.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I love that, Jimmy. Connect and protect. Well, thank you so much from my heart to yours. Thank you so much for hanging out here with me today. And really grateful for this beautiful conversation just to get to shoot shit with you for a while, as they say.
thank you, David. I lovely thank you so much for the opportunity to go and do it. Because I'm going to say the more we spread the word, the more the word gets around. And that's how it gets to this. And I love the modern age of technology where you can do all these things. I came from dinosaur ages where this didn't exist. But, it's pretty clever how the whole world can connect. That's how we get the messages across. And the more people that know, the more the
Yeah.
world's going to work to a more positive vibration. And that's a great.
Thank you, darling. Go well.
Thank you, Lena. Stay well and look after yourself and enjoy your lovely life. Speak to you
You
soon.
too. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye, Jimmy. This has been a production made with love, and I will continue to offer the best possible resources to assist you in staying connected and reconnecting if you've lost connection to your deeper purpose and your deeper meaning, so that you can go out and make the big change that I know that you are called to do. If you know another woman who might enjoy this, please share it with her. Leave a review, get in touch with me on socials or inside the Soul Mama community through the website in the show notes. I really love connecting with women on this journey. It's seriously what I am here to do. And I absolutely love bringing these conversations to you. So anything you can do to help me spread the word really helps it reach more women who need this special magic. Thank you for being here. I'll see you soon.
Bye. All right.